In a world that never stops speaking, silence has become uncomfortable. Everywhere you look, people are busy forming opinions, defending positions, reacting faster than they can reflect. We scroll through thoughts that aren't ours, echo beliefs we've never examined, and call it thinking. But beneath all the noise, a few people throughout history have tried to do something radically different. They've tried to think clearly. Not quickly, not cleverly. Clearly. One of the most remarkable of them was Michel de Montaigne, a 16th century French philosopher who, in a time of wars, dogma, and social turmoil, turned inward to explore the landscape of the human mind. He did not claim to be a teacher or a sage. He called himself an experimenter. His book wasn't written to prove arguments or to convince others. It was a record of his attempt to understand himself. And through that self-examination, Montaigne uncovered something that modern psychology would later confirm, that the fog of our thoughts isn't caused by a lack of intelligence, but by a lack of honesty. He discovered that to think clearly, we must first be willing to see ourselves clearly, without masks, without defense, without fear. The fog of the mind. To understand Montaigne's clarity, we first have to understand the fog he was trying to clear. The fog is not confusion in the ordinary sense. It's a deeper kind of blindness, a constant hum of unexamined beliefs, emotional noise, and inherited opinions that cloud perception. Most of us don't even realize it's there because we've grown up inside it. We mistake information for understanding, reaction for reflection, conviction for clarity. We live in an age of mental busyness but emotional emptiness. Our minds are full, but we can't hear ourselves think. Psychology calls this cognitive overload, when the mind becomes so saturated with input that genuine thought becomes impossible. We respond, but we don't reflect. We form opinions faster than we form awareness. We absorb the world's noise until it feels like our own voice. And yet beneath this chaos, every human being carries a quiet desire. The desire to see, to know what is real, to find a center of truth that isn't borrowed from someone else. That's where Montaigne began his work, not by adding more ideas, but by subtracting illusions. Inquiry. Without performance, Montaigne's method can be summarized in one phrase: inquiry without performance. He didn't write to look intelligent or to sound wise. He wrote to see what he really thought. He treated each essay as an experiment, a mental laboratory where he could test his ideas against experience. He would start with a question, not an answer. Something as simple as, "Why am I afraid of death?" Or "What does friendship really mean?" Then he would follow his thoughts wherever they led, even when they contradicted each other. Especially when they contradicted each other. He understood something most of us forget. The human mind isn't built for clarity by default. It's built for protection. When we encounter discomfort, the ego rushes to defend itself. When we face uncertainty, we grab for certainty, even false certainty, just to feel safe. Modern psychology calls this ego defense and confirmation bias. We selectively interpret the world in ways that protect our existing identity. We seek information that agrees with us and reject what doesn't. As a result, most people don't think, they rehearse. They repeat what keeps them comfortable. Montaigne saw through this long before psychology had a name for it. He refused to defend his beliefs automatically. Instead, he challenged them, reversed them, doubted them. He was less interested in being right than in being real, and that, he believed, was the only path to genuine clarity. 3. The courage to look without flinching, thinking clearly, Montaigne realized requires a specific kind of courage. Not the courage to fight others, but the courage to confront yourself. Most people are afraid of their own reflection, not the physical one, but the psychological one, the raw, unfiltered picture of who they really are beneath the surface. We spend our lives building identities, the achiever, the strong one, the good one, the rebel. These identities become armor. They protect us from pain but also distance us from truth. Montaigne took off the armor. He looked at his insecurities, his contradictions, his mortality, without pretending they weren't there. And through that honesty, he found clarity. He once wrote, "If I speak differently of myself on different occasions, it is because I look differently upon myself." He understood that to see clearly is to accept change. That self-knowledge isn't a fixed destination but a moving mirror, always shifting as we grow. This kind of honesty is painful. It breaks the illusion of control. But as Montaigne learned, the cost of honesty is far less than the cost of self-deception, because until you can look at yourself without flinching, every thought you have is filtered through fear. Think against yourself. One of Montaigne's most powerful habits was what we might call thinking against himself. He would write one line of reasoning, then immediately argue the opposite, not to win but to test, to see which ideas survived the friction of doubt. This habit built what modern psychology calls cognitive flexibility, the ability to hold two opposing ideas without collapsing. Most people cling to beliefs as if their identity depends on them. Montaigne knew that the tighter you cling, the less you see. So he questioned everything, his assumptions, his morals, even his conclusions. He wasn't afraid of contradiction because he knew that contradiction is the birthplace of insight. He believed that if your ideas can't survive your own questioning, they were never clear to begin with. In practice, this is simple but radical. When you feel absolutely certain, pause and ask, "What if I'm wrong?" Not cynically, but curiously. This question doesn't weaken your mind, it strengthens it, because the truth that survives honest doubt becomes unshakable. B. Detaching from identity. Another key to Montaigne's clarity was his ability to detach from identity. Though he was a nobleman, a scholar, and a public figure, he refused to let those titles define his thinking. When he wrote, he let the roles fall away. He approached his mind as a human being, not as a philosopher, judge, or aristocrat. He knew that the more we identify with our labels, our roles, our achievements, our philosophies, the harder it becomes to see truth. Identity is comforting, but it also filters perception. We start defending who we think we are instead of discovering who we might be. Modern psychology echoes this insight. Research on self-concept rigidity shows that people who cling tightly to fixed identities struggle to adapt, grow, or change beliefs, even when presented with evidence. They mistake self-preservation for self-knowledge. Montaigne's remedy was humility. He didn't try to be perfect. He tried to be honest, and that honesty freed him from the need to be consistent in every view. He allowed himself to evolve, something clarity always demands. Meditating on death. To Montaigne, the most effective way to clear the mind was to face death, not morbidly, but truthfully. He believed that our fear of death fuels most illusions. It drives us to distraction, ambition, and denial. We cling to the trivial because we don't want to face the finite. He wrote, "To study philosophy is to learn to die." By remembering mortality, he didn't become depressed. He became free. He saw life as more vivid, more urgent, more real. Modern psychology agrees. Awareness of mortality, what Ernest Becker called the denial of death, lies beneath much of human behavior. When we confront it consciously, we begin to see what truly matters. Our priorities sharpen, the noise fades. We stop performing for an audience that will one day disappear. For Montaigne, meditating on death wasn't about fear. It was about perspective. It was a way of clearing the fog, stripping away everything unnecessary until only truth remained.